Turn, if you will, to Hosea chapter 2. While you are turning there, you probably are wondering about our memory verse. It seems like a long one. How in the world am I ever supposed to memorize it? Listen, if you don't memorize it this month, it'll be okay. But I picked it for a very important reason. You know how I feel about camp. And you know how important it is. And I've been asking you to pray. Last month, our camp directors were our missionaries of the month. And all of July, Camp Evangel and Camp Bancroft are going to be wide open with campers. If you look at this verse, it says, "And the Philistines were afraid. For they said, God is come into the camp. And they said, Woe unto us, for there hath not been such a thing heretofore." Listen, when God's in something, you have no idea what's going to happen. You just don't. I mean, Chad was sharing some really good news. I won't have him share it with y'all, because he'll do a better job than I would, about the light upgrades at camp. So if you'll just give us a quick update.
The money that they sent over from Bible school, I got to researching this week, and they now make lights to fit the balances that they already had. So we, instead of it costing $100 per light for the 8-foot ones, we were able to order like 30 of them or something. They could use the whole dining room, so it was a lot more than we expected.
Some of those fixtures can be expensive, but it is a great thing for the camp because over the years it continues to reduce the cost for electricity, especially in the buildings that are used all the time. And the lights are on all day long. So it's just a small example of what he can do. I trust that spiritually what he does in the hearts and lives of young people this summer will be amazing to us at the end of July when we hear a report. I believe camp is going to be here on the 21st for Sunday morning, and they'll have the morning service and be able to sing and preach and share with us what God has already have accomplished by then. Right? Be fervent in prayer this month. Hosea chapter 2. We have been plowing through here, and I say plowing not because of rate of speed, but maybe by depth of digging up. And there's a really important reason for it. I don't really like to study and go over Hosea chapter 2 because it's all the nasty. It's all about my sin. It's all about how I left God and forsook Him and went after other things. And I can't imagine poor Hosea here being asked to make his life an object lesson for God and choosing this lady to be his wife, knowing what's going to happen and the unfaithfulness that's going to be the result of it. And yet it's a perfect picture of him choosing the nation of Israel, and it's also a perfect picture of him choosing the church. And so we've been studying last week about the ingratitude and how the nation of Israel were attributing God's blessing to idols. And we're kind of right in the middle of it. We're going to finish that up this morning, and then we're going to finish up the nasty, and we're going to get into God's response to the whole thing next week. But turn with me, if you will, to verse 7 of chapter 2. Actually, we can't do that. That'd be a tragedy, vexation of everything. Let's back up to verse 6, the first therefore. Okay? And we'll read down through 12. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall that she shall not find her paths. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. She shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax, given to cover her nakedness. And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereas she has said, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. And I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. It's a powerful word of prayer. Father, I can't imagine that anyone likes to be confronted with their sin from your word. And here as we read, it's easy for us to point our finger at someone else or find another measuring stick and say, well, at least I'm not as bad as so-and-so. But the truth of the matter is, when I compare my life to your word, I have to say that the prophets of old and the man of unclean lips. And when we see you high and lifted up, we begin to realize just how nasty and hateful and disgusting our sin really is. And so I trust this morning as we finish up this section that we would be honest with ourselves. Honest with ourselves about how loving you are, how good you are, how holy and righteous you are. And honest with ourselves that we like sheep have gone astray. And we have turned everyone to our own way. Help us to have hearts tender to your word, tender to the guiding and directing of the Holy Spirit. May we always seek to love you with our whole heart, our whole soul, our whole being. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Second half of verse 5 down through verse 10, we're dealing with this ingratitude that the nation of Israel has. And we saw Israel's actions going after their lovers, the passionate pursuit that takes place. We were looking at God's response in verse 6 in how that he puts this hedge of thorns and this contrast where they are trying and trying and trying to sin, and yet God is trying to frustrate their efforts to sin. And even though the emphasis here is on the nation of Israel's sin, you cannot help but see that even now God is loving them. Even in the midst of rebuke, even in the midst of judgment, he's still loving them. Think for me just a minute here. What would happen if God wasn't putting up the hedge of thorns? What would happen if he didn't put a wall and they are passionately pursuing their lovers? The destruction that would come upon them would be unbelievable. If you want to read about one of the most disgusting times in the nation of Israel, well, in history, you just go back and start reading in the book of Judges. Now, it's this horrible downward slide, and there are times where these judges come in and there's a little bit of a revival, but the revival never gets back to the original level. And so after a little while, you get to Gideon, and he's hiding in a cave, and they're trying to thresh wheat without being seen, because if anybody sees them threshing wheat, they're going to come and steal it. Folks, that's exactly, you'll see that in a minute, that's the picture of what God is doing here. Can you just imagine if he wasn't hindering us in our efforts to sin? Verse 7 here, we have Israel's lesson. And they have to learn it the hard way. And shame of it is, some of the lessons we remember the best are the ones that we learn the hard way. It says in verse 7, and she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Notice the persistence. And she shall follow after her lovers. That means she is paying attention to them. Every day as I'm running around in my normal job, I follow Bobby here and there and everywhere, up and down all over this county on roads I didn't know existed for a long time. At speeds I didn't know were possible. And I have to, at times your mind wanders, and sometimes I think about past message and the upcoming message and things that are going on. But if I'm following him, what do I have to do? I have to pay attention. Is he getting ahead of me? Is he slowing down? Is there something in the road? Is he turning right? Is he turning left? Is he going straight? And so when you follow something, you pay careful attention to it. But it's not just enough here. That's not an adequate description of what the nation of Israel is doing. And so he adds some other terms to it. He says, seek them. Seek is a strong term. A seek is a term that applies value to it. Jesus was dealing with this in the New Testament. And only what he was trying to tell them is, listen, I'm going to give you a couple of parables about the seeking something that is valuable. And I hope you understand that that value is supposed to be the things of God. But really, idolatry is when we take that value and we take that effort of seeking that belongs to God and we substitute it with something that isn't worthy to be in that place. In the New Testament, if you'll turn there real quickly, in Luke chapter 15, Jesus is talking about these three things, and starting in verse 4. The Pharisees and the scribes are bent out of shape because Jesus has been spending time with sinners. As if. And in verse 4 he says, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if you lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness, and go after that which is lost until he find it? And when he has found it, he layeth it on his shoulders, rejoicing. Now, hold on just a minute. If you have 100 sheep, you're pretty well off. I mean, not filthy rich here. He's not talking about Job with thousands and thousands and thousands of sheep. But 100 sheep is a pretty good amount of sheep for in the nation of Israel. Why in the world would you leave 99 for one that is lost? Well, he's teaching us a great deal about himself. Number one, as a shepherd myself, I always used to look at this and think, man, this is crazy. I would rather have the wolves get one than be looking for the one and come back and find out that the wolves ate the 99. You know why Jesus isn't worried about it? Because he never loses the 99. He's worried about the one that hasn't made it to the fold yet. Once they're in the fold, he's not worried about them. But it tells us, listen, he is willing to exert great effort and sacrifice for one sinner. One. Why? Because he values them. Go down, if you will, to verse 8. Just in case they haven't gotten it. Either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose one piece, does not light a candle and sweep the house, and seek diligently till she find it. And when she finds it again, there's great rejoicing that goes on. Notice the effort. She lights a candle, she sweeps the entire house, and diligently is a term where you spend a lot of time looking. This isn't, boys lose something, and you say, where'd you last put it? I don't know, I can't find it. And it's sitting on the table. That's not diligently looking. That's throwing 30 seconds at it and hoping somebody else will find it for you. That's not what's going on here. Why does she do that? Because she values the coin. She values that coin. And there's great celebration when she finds it. Go down to the third one in verse 11. And he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, give him the portions of good that falleth to me. And you know the story, right? I mean, here is the prodigal son, and he arrogantly goes to his father while he is still alive, and basically what he tells his father is, will you divide me the inheritance? When do you normally get an inheritance? His dad is still alive. And he walks in front of his dad and basically says, I wish you were dead. This has taken too long. Can you just divide the inheritance now? Can you imagine? I can't hardly imagine. Why Dad didn't just bust him in the face and beat his rear for an hour or two. But he quietly divides him his portion, knowing what's going to happen. I mean, how can any good thing happen when that is the attitude of the son? And sure enough, the kid goes away and he lives it up for a while. I mean, hey, everything's going really well. What's the dad do every day? He watches. Why? He's got another son still helping out on the farm, still doing all the other things. I mean, why not just rejoice in the one that's still there? Why worry so much over the one that's gone? And the prodigal, and we'll come back to this here just in a few minutes, but finally when he comes to himself, he returns back to his dad. Who notices whom first? Because God's always watching and He initiates the love. And the father runs to him. And he kills the fatted calf, and he puts on his clothes, and he gives him a ring, and he brings him back into the family, even after being treated so despicably. Do you understand why God told Hosea to marry Gomer? Do you understand what he's saying here? He says, listen, Israel has pursued her lovers like the prodigal pursued, wasting everything that he had. And when we get down to the next section, you're going to find out that God's been watching, waiting, just hoping to catch a glimpse of it, returning, because that's the kind of God we worship. Go back to Hosea chapter 2. It says He prevented him. Prevented him. It's very important. He loves them too much to simply allow them to destroy themselves. Look at some of the words that are used here. It says, shall not overtake, shall not find. They are not going to catch up to what they thought was so valuable, but what God knows is not good for us. What are we going to learn, folks, like in the Garden of Eden? That if God withholds something from us, it is not because He is mean or that question His character. He only keeps something from you because it is not good for you. Sin only satisfies for a season, and then it leaves you empty, in the hog pen, starving to death, doing things that you never thought as a good Jewish boy that you would ever do. Feed pigs and eat with them. It cannot meet the need in your life. And at some point you look up and you say, wait a second, there are servants in my Father's house that have it better than I do. Why in the world did I run off after other lovers and pursue them? And that's exactly what God's trying to do to the nation of Israel right here. And so the prodigal is going to return to his first love. Look at the end of verse 7. I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. You remember the prodigal sitting there feeding the pigs? And he in vain would have filled his stomach with the husks of the pig food. Now, I don't know about you, but in Ohio they fed pigs all the time, and they fed them grain, and it was kind of nice to look at, and it smelled good, and we're not talking about that here. Most people, when they feed pigs, feed them what? Yeah, scraps and garbage. And here he is, they're bringing the scraps and the garbage out here, and they're throwing it in, and this kid is looking at the scraps of the world and thinking, you know what? There's nothing here but to fill my belly. That's it. That's it. That's all I have left. That's what we call rock bottom. That's when you find out that pursuing your lovers was emptiness. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, right? His hair is grown out, his nails have grown out, he's been out there eating grass, and it says, when I came to myself. And that's what the prodigal son did. And that's what God is waiting for the nation of Israel to do. Listen, at some point in your sin, when you come to yourself and you see God for who He really is, and you see your sin for what it really is, you realize this isn't as satisfying as you thought it was going to be. This isn't taking me down the road I thought was going to be fun. It's not meeting the need in my life. Look at verse 8. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil and multiplied her silver and gold, which they provided for Baal. The consequences of their choices, there's no consideration of God. Not even aware of how He's working in their life. Chad came up to me this morning and said, hey, I got some good news about Camp Evangel. My eyes just about welled up with tears. That's a God thing. It's a God thing. We had Vacation Bible School a little while ago, and we tried to raise money. I was all excited about the amount of money we raised. It was a little bit more than you reasonably expect. And you send it over there, and you're excited that you can buy some new lights, and then to find out, well, wait a second, he's been working behind the scenes, and now instead of replacing the whole thing, we get to do, and an entire building is going to save them a ton of money all summer long. It's a good thing. school, Lance was saying, he takes these guys over here knowing that he's going to bring the nation of Israel here and this prophecy is going to be fulfilled. If you're not paying attention when you read through that, and you're not looking for God at work behind the scenes, then you miss the importance of it. How many times in the last year and a half, 2 years, has God done something for you and you haven't even been paying attention? Verse 9. Therefore I will return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax, given to cover her nakedness. This is a lack of essentials and God's blessing in your life. How many blessings did they miss? And they didn't even care because they were so busy pursuing Baal. Now I have time to turn to we got to Ezekiel chapter 16. We've been there a couple of times, but it's really important, so let's go there. Maybe we'll spend some time in Ezekiel sometime. I don't know, this is a hard book. Verse 17. Thou hast also taken thy fair jewels of my gold and of my silver which I have given thee, and madest to thyself images of men, and didst commit whoredom with them. And tookest thy broidered garments, and coverest them, and hast set mine oil and mine incense before them. My meat also which I gave thee, fine flour and oil and honey, wherewith I fed thee. Thou hast even set it before them for a sweet savor, and thus it was, saith the Lord God. Do you see the problem here? God says, every time I bless you, you take my blessing and you turn around and you use it for sin. You take the gold and the silver that I blessed you with and you make images to worship. And then you take the flour and the oil and the things that I have blessed you with. You have taken the land of milk and honey that I have provided for you, and you turn around and you use it for sin. Oh, I'm going to take this flour and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to worship Baal with it. I'm going to take this oil and I'm going to make an offering to Baal with it. Do you hear what God's saying? Bless the USA! And then every time He blesses the USA, we take it and use it for sin. And God says, now wait a minute. How in the world do you expect me to keep blessing you if that's what you're going to do with my blessing? Because basically what He's doing then is He is empowering you to sin. Those are the choices that you are making with His blessings. So how does He prevent it? Remove the blessings. Remove the blessings. It's what He is doing to the nation of Israel in Hosea. Remember when He said, I cannot bless her children. That's what He was talking about right here. Give verse 10. Gets worse. You say, how can it be worse? And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. Public humility and shame. Public humility and shame. You say, how in the world did that happen to the nation of Israel? Well, we just finished a little bit ago studying the book of Daniel. That was discovering her lewdness. The nations that once feared them abuse them. They tear down that glorious temple that the Queen of Sheba came to see. They ruin the wall that used to be this majestic picture of all of David's blessings. Instead of paying tribute to them, now all of a sudden the nation of Israel is paying tribute. And thousands of them have been carried off slaves to the Babylonians, to the Assyrians, Philistines, all kinds of folks. Many of them have been slaughtered. Some of them are hungry. Most of them are humiliated. Until we get to the time of Gideon where they are hiding in the rocks, in the caves. They are not identifiable as the nation of Israel anymore. They're just a bunch of vagabonds that are scattered out. Go with me to 1 Chronicles chapter 22. 1 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 5. It says, and David said, Solomon, my son, is young and tender. And the house that is to be built for the Lord must be exceeding magnifical. I like that word. Of fame and glory throughout what? I will therefore now make preparation for it. So David prepared abundantly before his death. Now, if you will, please jump to 1 Kings chapter 10. Because here comes the Queen of Sheba. She's kind of got a little attitude. She has heard all this noise that's been going on about Solomon, and she decides that she wants to come down and check it out herself. And so she rolls into town in verse 2 with all her pomp and circumstance. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bear spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen all Solomon's wisdom and, what? This magnifical house, whose glory will be spread through all the countries. Verse 5, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up into the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. She was done arguing with him. And she said to the king, it was a true report that I heard in mine own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. You see what happens? She rolls into town. She has all these spices. She has all this gold. She's thinking, you know what, Solomon? Everybody keeps telling me you're a big shot. I'm going to show you. I travel like a big shot. Look at all the junk I have on my camels. Look at how important I am. And she walks in and she sees this amazing thing. And she eats dinner with him, and he's eating amazing foods prepared by these amazing chefs. And they have unbelievable silverware. The finest china. They have folks dressed in incredibly nice clothes coming in and serving the meal and entertaining. And she's like, what? And she talks with them, and his wisdom is blowing her mind. What's the response? In verse 7, howbeit I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes had seen it, and behold, the half was not told me. Thy wisdom and prosperity exceedeth thy fame which I heard. Happy are thy men, happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee, and hear thy wisdom. And jump down to verse 10. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold. Anybody know how much a talent of gold is? We don't know, we don't care, because it's not ours. I looked it up. You ready for this? A talent of gold was approximately 75 pounds. So the Queen of Sheba was so impressed with what she saw and what she heard and how the folks in his court responded, she unloaded $1,116,000 worth of gold. We don't have time to read all the other stuff she did. Do you understand that God is saying through Hosea, I provided for you gold and silver, and I gave you oil, and I gave you... Study Solomon sometime. I started studying and I gave up because it just blew my mind. People would come and they would bring him precious stones. And he would, thank you very much, appreciate it, the whole thing, and they'd leave, and he'd turn and hand it to a servant and said, could you take these diamonds down to my diamond house? Could you take these rubies down to my ruby house? Can you take the sapphires to the sapphire house? Can you take the jade to the jade house? You say, house? Yeah! It says he built him houses of precious stones. If the service were over this morning and I stood at the back and, ladies, every one of you that walked out, I gave you 1 carat, I mean, absolutely sparkling Solomon, he would be absolutely gracious. And then he'd have a servant run down and chuck it in his diamond house with the other, I don't know, 10,000. Some of them 4 or 5, 6 carats that he don't know what to do with. And God says, because of your sin, you can't live in a really, really nice place with an ivory house and all this stuff. And the fame of me doesn't get spread abroad to all these different countries. Instead, I'm going to have to discover your lewdness. You are going to be a public shame. Do you know how much Moses never wanted that to happen? When they came up to the river the first time and they would not go over, God told Moses and Joshua, no, Caleb, step aside. I'm going to wipe them out. And God said, I'm done with this sinful people. And Moses said, please don't do that, because the name of you has already been spread abroad. Don't be gracious, because we deserve it. Be gracious for your name's sake. Folks, do you realize we drag the name of God through the mud all the time? We drag the name of God through the mud. Back to Hosea real quickly. Sin sometimes has to be used as a punishment for restoration. Then look at verse 11 through 13, because we have this hypocrisy that's going on in the nation of Israel. Verse 11, it says, I will also cause all of her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbath, and all her solemn feasts. See, there's a problem here. They have been worshiping God with lip service. They've still been participating in the feast days. They've still been doing the holy days. They've still been doing the Sabbath days. But their motivation is mirth and not worship. Oh, they could not wait for Christmas. Not because it had anything to do with the birth of the Son, but because family meals and gifts. Oh, they can't wait for this occurrence, but it's not because it had anything to do with God delivering them from the nation of Egypt. It had to do with, we get to see Uncle so-and-so and Aunt so-and-so. We get to eat such and such, and we get to play games, and we get to... This is what I call slide of sacrilege. Look at verse 11. You have this dutiful participation that goes on. They are participating in the feast days. They are participating in the new moons and in the Sabbaths and all her solemn feasts. But there's no joy. There's no worship. And then in verse 12, they start valuing the ungodly. These are my rewards that my lovers have given me. And instead of the blessings coming from God, they start attributing those blessings to the results of their sin. And so they were dutiful participation to God, but now they start valuing the ungodly. I'm getting rewards for this. That's what the trade-off is. I'm not giving up this sin because it makes me feel good or whatever. Then you go to verse 13 and you see that there is this continuation. They're most of the way down the slide now. I will visit upon her the days of Balaam when she burned incense to them and she decked herself with earrings and her jewels. Worship. They're worshiping them quietly in the start of verse 13. See, and it says, burned incense to them. There's no music involved with that. There's not a lot of hoopla involved with that. In fact, you can burn incense in your home and no one even really knows. You just value them a little bit more. And so I'll still go out here to the feast days and everybody will think I'm a Christian, but on the sly here I'm burning incense to something else. And then he goes a little bit farther in the middle of the verse. Decked herself with earrings and her jewels. Well, that's a little bit more than burning incense, because now people can tell if you're wearing earrings and jewels, right? You're coming out of the closet now. Getting a little bolder in your worship, getting a little bolder in your sin. And then we go a little bit farther. And she went after her lovers. That is wholeheartedly seeking. That's openly. I don't care who sees my jewelry. I don't care who sees. I'm out in the open now. I don't care what other people think. The only thing that matters is my passionate pursuit of sin. And the idolatry is complete. Except for one step. We've taken God off of his throne and we have substituted a fake. But look at the end of the verse. And what? Forget me. Forget me. Do you see the slide? I start out with dutiful participation. I'll go because my parents expect me to, or it's a family get-together, or it's whatever, so I feel like I have to, but my heart's not in it. The whole time I start valuing the ungodly. There's something over here drawing me away from the right place that God has in my life. And then I start worshiping them quietly by burning incense. Oh, nobody really knows, but I'm much more committed to it. And then I seek wholeheartedly. Now I really don't care who knows. I'll wear the jewelry and run around in public because it doesn't matter to me pretty soon. I've just completely forgotten God. Easter's all about the Easter Bunny, and Christmas is all about Santa Claus, and who really cares about it? And the rest of that nonsense, never believed it anyway. What are the consequences? Because what God does here, real quickly, is in verses 11, 12, and 13, he wraps the consequences around why. Go back to verse 11. I will destroy her vines and her fig trees. Oh, sorry, missed one. Now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. I will cause all her mirth to cease. The first consequence, no joy. How many people do you know that are head deep in sin and they are miserable? They're getting close to the prodigal son sitting in the pig pen and saying, man, even a servant in the house of God has it better than I do. And I used to be a son. No profitability. Verse 12, I will destroy her vines and her fig trees. The beasts of the field will enjoy them, but you will not. There's no profitability in there, and that's what we see in the times of Gideon. Because every time they planted something and started to thresh it, here come the Midianites and they just steal it from them. And when they did make something, it's not like they could get together and have a big feast day and enjoy it. They had to try and consume it quietly, because if anybody found out, the feast would be over. How do you look at that and desire that? How do you look at that and say, man, I'd rather have sin for a season than I would God? And then we have serious judgment of sin in verse 13. I will visit upon her the days of Balaam. Now, wait a minute. We're not going to go back there, and we're not going to talk about Balaam, but I'll tell you this right now. It's got to be pretty bad if a donkey starts talking. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, when God's man won't listen to God's word and won't listen to the voice of the Lord, and God has to show up and have a donkey talk to him, you know you're getting pretty pitiful. And in those days, he could not pronounce the curse on the nation of Israel. But he did go to the Midianite king and say, listen, you want to bring down the nation of Israel? Just get them to intermarry so that they slowly start burning a little incense. And eventually they'll start wearing the jewelry. And pretty soon they'll forget about God. Consequences of their choices are harsh. We're going to close in Ezekiel chapter 23. Ezekiel chapter 23. Cause and effect, very quickly, in verse 5 and 6. And we don't have time to get into This is more picturesque, just like Gomer is. And Aholah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians, her neighbors, which were clothed with blue, captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Do you see what happens here? They looked at the Assyrians and they saw them and they said, man, they look stud muffin right there. I'd like to marry something like that. Wow, their cities look, and they looked good. What did the Assyrians do to the nation of Israel? Go to verses 9 and 10. Wherefore I have delivered her into the hand of her lovers, into the hand of the Assyrians, upon whom she doted. These discovered her nakedness. They took her sons and her daughters and slew her with the sword, and she became famous among women, for they executed judgment upon her. They desired it so bad, and it ruined them. Jump down to verses 12 through 16. She doted upon the Assyrians, her neighbors, captors and rulers, clothed. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, same thing. Then I saw that she was defiled, and I took both one way. And she increased her whoredoms. Increased, didn't repent. Reminds you of Pharaoh in Egypt. We don't have time to go all the way down through 16, but you see what happens? Same thing. Go to verse 22 through 26. Therefore, O Holabah, the other sister, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will raise up thy lovers against thee, from whom my mind is alienated, and I will bring them against thee on every side. The Babylonians, the book of Daniel's all about, well, several books in the Bible, and all the Chaldeans, Pekod, and Shoa, and Ko, and all the Assyrians with them, all of them desirable young men, captains and rulers, great lords and renown, all of them riding upon horses. And they shall come against thee with chariots, wagons, and wheels, and with an assembly of people. You see what God says? The consequences of your choices. You look over here and you say, I wish we were like so-and-so. Right now the United States wants to be like Europe. Sure wish we could be like Europe. Had more laws like them, had more such and such, had more such and such. Listen, if you wanted to be European, why is there a July 4th, 1776? We were European, for crying out loud. It wasn't so great back then. And God says, you stare at the world and you see the handsome young men, and you see the goodly things, and you see the blue and the purple, and you see the chariots and the wagons and the prosperity. You say, man, I wish I had that. The only problem is when you get it, God gives it to you in judgment. And those wagons that you were doting over are used to carry off your sons and daughters. And finally, when you're sitting in Babylon, or you're in Syria, or the wall's torn down and the temple is destroyed, and you're not even a recognizable country anymore, you raise up your voice and you cry unto the Lord God and say, oh, woe is me. And the Father's standing there saying, here comes the problem. I can't believe it took that much. I can't believe you would eat with the pigs before you returned to me. Now, if you want to be encouraged, in Hosea chapter 2, read the next verse, verse 14. We're not going to get into it this morning. Our time is up. We'll get into it next week. God's judging them, and they are certainly reaping the consequences of their choices. But he has not forgotten them, has not turned their back on them, he has not left them. And he hasn't done the same for me either. Every time I get sanctimonious and think, man, that person's a waste of flesh. What if God thought that way about me? If my salvation was dependent upon me, tough to draw someone away with a hot dog when the juiciest, most well-cooked, best savored steak is right in front of them. And sometimes it is so easy to chase after the things of the world because